it's your girl Jay, and today I am here with my most disappointed books for 2024. Last year, I posted this video in July 2024, so we are on a good mojo this year where I'm actually posting it in January. Round of applause for me, please. Thank you, thank you. Now, these books are going to be in no particular order. It does not necessarily mean that they are bad books. They just were not what I wanted in those books. I do have a total of 7 books that disappointed me in the year of 2024, so without further ado, let us get started. The first book that disappointed me was The Dangerous Ones by Lauren Blackwood. This is a vampire book. It takes place in 1863. It follows a black woman named Jerusalem, and she is a saint, which essentially means that she has godlike abilities. She escapes slavery, and a year later she joins forces with the Union. She is taught to fight by Alexei, who is a 3,000-year-old vampire. Her weapon of choice is the spear, and with the help of Alexei, she goes off to fight the Confederates, which includes the vampire who killed her entire family. So it's like the story of that. I love me a vampire book. I really do. But this one was not it. This one had so much potential to be something incredible, but it is supposed to be set during the Civil War, but then the characters are using slang terms that took you completely out of the story, so you could never really get fully immersed into it. There's also a very abusive relationship in this. Jerusalem is ridiculously mean to Alexei, and it's supposed to be like endearing, but I never really understood why Alexei liked her so much, because she was just a straight up bitch all the time. She was just constantly hitting him and verbally abusing him. I just couldn't get behind it, so it definitely disappointed me because it had so much potential. The next book that I have is a Goodreads Choice Award winner, which I truly do not understand because I was not a fan, but it is The Ministry of Time. This is by Kayleen Bradley, and I was so bored by this. I was so incredibly bored. It's essentially a time travel book, but not really time travel, but like also kind of time travel. It basically follows a branch of government that takes people from the past and plucks them out of their time frame and puts them into the modern world, and a government worker is paired with them, and they have to try to acclimate them into today's society. So this one follows Graham Groer, and he is a 1935 Arctic explorer who died. He is taken from that time frame and plopped into the British society. And him and his bridge, which is what they call these people who are supposed to help them, fall in love. And it was just weird in my opinion. It was very slow paced, and then all of a sudden it becomes like a spy thriller moment, and it just didn't make sense in my head. A lot of people loved this though, so I am clearly the odd one out, but I was so disappointed by this. Next I have Lore of the Wilds by Annalie Sabrana. This one is such a stinking cool concept. I was so excited about it when I picked it up to begin with, but then as the story went on, I was so disappointed by it. It basically follows Lore, who lives in a village that traps its people inside of it because of a magical forest, and there's a natural disaster that sweeps through this village, and so Lore makes a deal with a Fae Lord. He basically needs help cataloging his library that Fae cannot go into, so she agrees in exchange for her village to be made well again. She then finds a grimoire in this library and she starts to harness its magic. She discovers that her village is still not doing very well, even though she's doing what the Fae asked, and so she decides to take the grimoire, run away, and solve the problems herself. It's the story of that, okay? Like I said, really cool concept. I really liked the magical library aspect of it. I loved the time that we spent there, but then as soon as she runs away, things got just so incredibly jumbled and a little bit boring, in my opinion. The ending was by far the best part. So honestly, the beginning was decent, the middle really lacked for me, and then the ending was great, which is why I ended up giving it a 3 out of 5 stars, because it definitely would have been lower if that ending twist had not happened. Did it make sense? No. But I was here for it anyways. There's also this random fox companion, which I thought was going to be a huge part of this book, and then it was there, completely disappeared, and then showed up again at the end, and it just did not make sense to me. I just feel like so much could have been done with this book, and it would have been incredible. So I was definitely disappointed. Also, and I was also a little bit confused because it's marketed as a spicy new adult kind of book, but there was literally one spicy scene, and if that had been taken out, it would have easily been a YA book, and I think could have been very successful. But yeah, I just was very disappointed with this. Next up, we got Body Check by Elle Kennedy. This was my first Elle Kennedy book, and I have been so overhyped for this author because everybody seems to love her. They say she's like the queen of spicy romances, and honestly, this book fell so completely flat for me. I did not care about these characters. I did not care what happened to them. There was like a subplot about a gambling kind of situation, and I still just was like, cool, okay. And I also think that it may have been a little bit of my fault in this book because it has the cheating trope, which I'm not the biggest fan of. I just didn't know that going into it. So this book was not written for me regardless, which is why I was definitely disappointed by it. Next up, I have The Antique Hunter's Guide for Murder, and this is by C.L. Miller. This one, I thought the concept was a lot of fun. This essentially follows a woman named Freya. She left the antiquing business like 20 years ago, and she finds out that her old mentor named Arthur is found dead in his shop. And so she receives a coded letter from him basically outlining that he has been murdered. So she teams up with her Aunt Carol to try to figure out what actually happened to Arthur, and it's like the story of that. But I was so incredibly bored by this. It sounds like it could be so intriguing and exciting, and it just wasn't. This definitely had the case of the author is going to tell you every single thing that happened instead of showing you. Like, there were multiple paragraphs that would outline what just happened in the story, and it would be like, okay, so far this has happened, this person did this and this person did this and that means this, and it was so stupid. Like, I can figure that out myself as the reader by reading it. Just show it to me. You don't have to tell me every 2 seconds what just happened. And the amount of times that this book had the word darling written in it had to be over 1,000. Like, I would love somebody to count. Someone get the ebook and let me know, because it has to be 1,000. The next book I have is And I Darken by Kristen White. This was a booktube darling when I was new to booktube. In 2016 it came out. Everybody and their mother was reading it. They were obsessed with it. Everybody was rating it 5 out of 5 stars. I bought it, kept it on my shelves until now because I was so scared that I wasn't going to enjoy it as much as other people, and that fear was correct. It was correct. This is definitely not a bad book. I think, like the ratings reflect, a lot of people really loved it. I have just come to find that I am not a historical fiction girly. It's just not my genre. I was so bored by this. I also hated the main love interest. I do not understand why both of the siblings in this were so infatuated by him. I think he is a bland piece of bread, in my opinion, and I did not understand the hype towards this man. I wanted him to die so desperately in the second book. He did not. So I probably will not be picking up the third book unless it falls into my lap, because I hated this man. So I was definitely disappointed because everybody else and their mother is obsessed with this series. Maybe not anymore, but back in the day, everybody loved it. Cannot be me. The next and final book that I am putting on my most disappointed reads for 2024 is The Cotton Candy Massacre by Christopher Robertson. In my wrap-up, I said Christopher Robinson. But this one is basically a killer clown slasher horror novella with an immense amount of gore, which sounds like it would be right up my alley, right? Wrong. It took me from July 2024 until the end of December 2024 to read this book. It's not a novella. I don't know why I said it's a novella. It's like 300 pages long, but it felt like it should have been a novella. I just looked it up. It is 355 pages, so definitely not a novella, but in my head, it was a novella. So the fact that it took me from July to December to read it was very confusing to me. I don't think that this author took enough time in the 355 pages to set up for you to actually care about these characters. So once the murders and killings started happening, I was just like, yeah, cool. I hope they all die, because I didn't feel emotionally connected to any of them, which is good because the gore was very well done in this, and I really was rooting for these clowns to viciously murder these literal children, which sounds evil and terrible. But yeah, it was just a little disappointing because it took me so long to read the book, and if I had truly enjoyed it, I think that it would have taken me a lot less time. Alright everybody, so those were my 7 most disappointing books for 2024. I will hopefully have my most surprising, my worst, and my best videos up very shortly. We're hoping for not a repeat of last year with the July uploads. We'll see how the mental health is doing. Let me know down below if you have read any of these books and what you thought of them, and I will see you all in my next video. Goodbye!